The year is 1917. The world is engulfed in World War I, a conflict of unprecedented scale and brutality. For 3 long years, Europe has been locked in a deadly struggle with millions perishing. The war began in 1914, ignited by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. A complex web of alliances drew the great powers into the conflict, dividing them into the Allied powers and the Central Powers. The United States in 1917 was deeply divided, with public opinion wavering between neutrality and growing concerns about the war. President Woodrow Wilson, re-elected on the slogan, "He kept us out of war," faced mounting pressure. The sinking of the Lusitania in 1915 by a German U-boat, killing over 100 Americans, shocked the nation. The Zimmermann telegram, proposing a German-Mexican alliance against the US, galvanized American public opinion towards war. In April 1917, President Wilson asked Congress to declare war on Germany, citing the need to safeguard democracy. The US entry into the war tipped the balance of power in favor of the Allies. American troops and resources proved decisive in the Allied victory. The war's impact extended beyond the battlefield, forever altering global politics and the U.S. quote, "S role in the world." At the dawn of the 20th century, Europe was teetering on the brink of war. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914 ignited the conflict. Austria-Hungary's declaration of war on Serbia set off a chain reaction, drawing in Germany, Russia, France, and Britain. The great powers were now locked in a deadly struggle that would reshape the world. The outbreak of war in 1914 exposed the fragility of European peace and the dangers of complex alliances. The Triple Alliance and Triple Entente drew the great powers into the conflict with alarming speed. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand triggered these alliances, escalating a localized crisis into a global war. The Central Powers faced the Allied powers in a conflict none had desired, but all had prepared for. By the end of 1914, the Western Front had devolved into a bloody stalemate of trench warfare. Soldiers endured constant shelling, machine gun fire, and the horrors of no man's land. New technologies like poison gas and heavy artillery increased the conflict's lethality. Battles like Verdun and the Somme became infamous for their staggering losses and futility. The sinking of the RMS Lusitania by a German U-boat in 1915 marked a turning point in American public opinion. The loss of 128 American lives sparked outrage and eroded US neutrality. Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare campaign further inflamed anti-German sentiment. In January 1917, the Zimmermann telegram proposed a German-Mexican alliance against the US. The revelation of this audacious plot shocked the American public and government. The telegram solidified American resolve to confront German aggression. President Wilson sought a higher moral ground for American involvement in the war. In April 1917, he articulated his vision of defending democracy and making the world safe for democracy. Wilson's rhetoric resonated deeply with the American public. He argued that American involvement was about safeguarding liberty and self-determination for all nations. With the declaration of war, the US faced the task of mobilizing a fighting force. The American Expeditionary Force, commanded by General John J. Pershing, was formed. Training camps transformed civilians into soldiers, and American factories produced wartime supplies. The arrival of American troops in Europe boosted Allied morale and adapted quickly to trench warfare. The AEF's early engagements, like the Battle of Cantigny, marked the first major American offensive. American forces captured Cantigny, boosting Allied morale. Battles like Belleau Wood and Château-Thierry tested American troops against seasoned German forces. These experiences forged a battle-hardened force capable of taking on the German army. By fall 1918, the tide of war had turned in favor of the Allies, thanks to the American Expeditionary Force. The Meuse-Argonne Offensive involved over 1.2 million American soldiers and aimed to break German lines. The offensive succeeded, breaking the back of the German army. American troops displayed extraordinary courage, convincing German leadership that the war was unwinnable. Germany, a nation at war, at the heart of the Central Powers stood Germany, transformed by industrialization and militarism. The German war machine was unleashed upon Europe with devastating effect. Led by generals like Hindenburg and Ludendorff, Germany's army was renowned for its discipline and skill. However, Germany's initial triumphs were short-lived, faltering against French and British resistance. Austria-Hungary, the empire that had inadvertently triggered the war with its ultimatum to Serbia, was a study in contrast. A sprawling multinational realm ruled by the aging Habsburg dynasty, Austria-Hungary was a patchwork of ethnicities, languages and cultures held together by a fragile web of tradition, imperial authority and the looming threat of its more powerful neighbors. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, exposed the empire's internal weaknesses and the simmering nationalist tensions that threatened to tear it apart. Austria-Hungary's army, though large, was hampered by logistical problems, ethnic divisions within its ranks, and a lack of modern equipment. Its industrial base, less developed than that of Germany, struggled to keep pace with the demands of modern warfare. Austria-Hungary's dependence on Germany for military and economic support became increasingly apparent as the war dragged on. The Austro-Hungarian war effort was further complicated by the empire's internal divisions. Nationalist movements within the empire, particularly among the Czechs, Slovaks and South Slavs, saw the war as an opportunity to break free from Habsburg rule. Austria-Hungary, already on shaky ground, found itself fighting a war on multiple fronts, both external and internal, its very existence hanging in the balance. The Ottoman Empire, once a mighty power that had dominated the Eastern Mediterranean for centuries, entered the war as a shadow of its former self. By the early 20th century, the Ottoman Empire, known as the sick man of Europe, was in terminal decline, its territories shrunk by nationalist uprisings and European imperialism. The Ottoman Empire's decision to join the Central Powers was driven by a combination of factors, including resentment towards the Allied powers, particularly Britain and France, and the hope of regaining lost territories. The Ottoman Empire's entry into the war had significant consequences, expanding the conflict into the Middle East and drawing in new combatants. The Ottoman Empire's strategic location, controlling the vital straits of the Dardanelles and the Bosporus, posed a threat to Allied supply lines to Russia. The Ottoman army, though poorly equipped and trained, fought fiercely, particularly in the defense of their homeland. The Gallipoli campaign of 1915 to 1916, a disastrous attempt by the Allies to capture the Dardanelles and knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war, resulted in heavy casualties on both sides and ended in humiliating defeat for the Allies. The Ottoman Empire, though ultimately on the losing side, played a significant role in shaping the course of World War I. By the autumn of 1918, after more than 4 years of brutal warfare, the Central Powers were teetering on the brink of collapse. The relentless pressure of the Allied offensives, fueled by American manpower and resources, had taken a devastating toll on the German army and its allies. The German home front, starved of resources and demoralized by years of war, was on the verge of collapse. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, riven by internal divisions and facing growing unrest within its diverse population, was on the verge of disintegration. The Ottoman Empire, its armies shattered and its territories occupied by Allied forces, was forced to sue for peace. The German leadership, facing the imminent collapse of its armies and the spectre of revolution at home, realized that defeat was inevitable. The arrival of American troops on the Western Front had tipped the balance of power decisively in favor of the Allies. The American Expeditionary Force, though relatively inexperienced at the outset of the war, had proven to be a formidable fighting force, its ranks filled with fresh troops eager to prove themselves in battle. The American troops, fighting alongside their battle-hardened French and British allies, injected a much-needed sense of optimism and determination into the Allied war effort. On November 11th, 1918, at 11 o'clock in the morning, the guns fell silent across the Western Front, marking the end of hostilities in the Great War. The armistice, signed earlier that morning in a railway carriage in the forest of Compiègne, France, brought to a close one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. The terms of the armistice, dictated by the victorious Allies, were harsh, requiring Germany to surrender vast amounts of territory, disarm its military, and accept responsibility for the war. The news of the armistice was met with jubilation in Allied capitals and a sense of relief and disbelief in the trenches. For the soldiers who had endured years of unimaginable horrors, the silence was deafening, the sudden absence of gunfire and shelling almost surreal. The war that had claimed millions of lives and reshaped the political map of Europe was finally over. The armistice, however, was only the first step in a long and difficult process of rebuilding and reconciliation. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, would formally end the war, but its punitive terms and the bitterness it engendered would cast a long shadow over the post-war world, contributing to the rise of extremism and the outbreak of another global conflict just 2 decades later. World War I, the war to end all wars, reshaped the political, social, and economic landscape of the 20th century. The war shattered the old order of empires and alliances, ushering in a new era of uncertainty. The Treaty of Versailles created new tensions that contributed to World War II. The war transformed the United States' role in world affairs. The United States emerged as a global power, its military and economic resources decisive in the Allied victory. The United States' entry into World War I was a watershed moment in the nation's history, marking its emergence as a global power and forever altering its relationship with the world. The doughboys who crossed the Atlantic to fight in the trenches of Europe returned home changed men, forever marked by the horrors they had witnessed. The war had a profound impact on American society, accelerating social and economic changes that would reshape the nation in the decades to come. The war also left an indelible mark on the global landscape. The old order of empires and alliances lay in ruins, replaced by a new map of Europe and a world grappling with the trauma of industrialized warfare. The Treaty of Versailles, while intended to ensure a lasting peace, sowed the seeds of future conflict, leaving a legacy of resentment and instability that would haunt the international community for decades to come. The war had shattered the illusion of progress and enlightenment that had characterized the pre-war era. The horrors of trench warfare, the use of poison gas, and the unprecedented scale of casualties left an enduring sense of disillusionment and a loss of innocence that would permeate art, literature, and culture in the years to come. The United States' involvement in World War I raises profound questions about the nature of war. Did it shorten the conflict and save lives, or prolong the bloodshed and contribute to post-war instability? These questions continue to be debated by historians. The legacy of World War I serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict. It compels us to reflect on the past and strive for a more peaceful future.